I'm getting closer to the bottom of my sheafs of paper. Those of you who are hot are getting excited. There are still fans, by the way, at the back of the congregation, if that is helpful for you. I always have one, I know. I'd like to thank you so much for coming in today, especially because I know that it is warm, and we'll try not to keep you too long. This is a talk that I actually started long before I realized the significance of today on the liturgical calendar. I was actually thinking with this title, maybe it's time to let the old ways die. I was fixated, actually, on summer vacation, spending time with my loved ones far away and dealing with all of the things that come with that, tricky realities of family histories, not geopolitical ones. But for whatever reason, I kept also being drawn back to this song in my playlist, one that I kept adding to each new playlist because I needed, I think, to unpack it. It's from a movie soundtrack, which is not surprising, coming from me, and the Oscar-winning A Star is Born from last winter, though it's actually not the song that won all the awards and attention, which is also not surprising, coming from me. Sung as a slow, smoky ballad by Bradley Cooper, kind of deliciously, just gonna say that, maybe it's time to let the old ways die, speaks about the difficulties of change and how the truths that we tell ourselves and each other about the world, the hereafter, how it all works, how those truths are so often mostly just myths that we create and can change if we want to. It's mostly, I think, about how impossible that change can seem. The romantic in me says that this song kept calling my name because I discovered that its writer, Jason Isbell, a 4-time Grammy winner, grew up just a few miles away from where I ended up spending my summer vacation with my family, northern Alabama, just a couple of miles across the border from southern Tennessee. Coincidence? Yeah, probably. But being a fellow Southerner, the first line, it really resonates with me. Maybe it's time to let the old ways die, which is exactly what those of us who inherit a troubled heritage feel, I imagine. Certainly I do. Don't get me wrong. I love and I am proud of my family, just like anybody else. I didn't know any of the people who owned slaves or fought to maintain that as a status quo. Neither does anyone that I have ever known, much less been related to. I certainly do not condone their choices or try and excuse them. But when you spend one winter, as I did, deep diving into your family history with your dad, and turn the leaf on an 1850 Texas census to find your ancestors' entry, with 15 immediate family members, all named and mostly under 18, dear Lord, life before birth control was hell on earth, followed by a list of 97 souls, also on that property, all unnamed, just gender and age. There's no way to escape that history. It's staring you right in the face. It's not my fault. Still, it settles right here on your shoulders. It's not going anywhere. I won't escape it, even as I strive to make sure that I help to never recreate it or allow it to continue. It is there. Like my father's PTSD from serving in Vietnam, which infected our family with fear of his lightning-fast anger and sorrow for his never-ending pain and guilt. Like our collective national shame and anguish for every civilian death in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Like the children of abuse or survivors of domestic violence. History, personal or global, comes with a price. Every single one of us carries that burdens that we did not create and cannot escape. The next line, it takes a lot to change a man, Hell, it takes a lot to try. Rings doubly true when I open up the personal and the political together. I mean, it's hard enough to change my own bad habits, but societies? It takes more than war, as 1865 proves, and the struggles of African Americans to achieve true parity in our country ever since, as the 80 years of troubles in Northern Ireland proved after an official end to the fight for Irish independence from Great Britain, 80 years of bombs and terrorism and instilled hatreds. And obviously, after 2 global wars in the 20th century, we are still dealing with the shadows of colonialism, anti-Semitism, totalitarianism. I mean, we know the list. It's big. It takes more than legal or judicial victories as we line up to fight for women's rights to their bodies again and again, 46 years after Roe versus Wade, to fight for our rivers and our mountains and our air, 47 and 56 years, respectively, after the Clean Water and Clean Air Acts. And it takes more than a single movement, as the civil rights and women's rights and queer rights movements all do. These core changes to ourselves as a people, our institutions as a whole, apparently, frustratingly, seem to take generations. Hell, it takes a lot to try. So, the trying. Now, this is fascinating territory for me. And I would like to give, instead of large, a very small, personal example of what that can do. It involves my quest to eat less chocolate. Again, it's me. So, as some of you may or may not know, I was diagnosed in April of last year with type 2 diabetes. It was a very traumatic event for me, and it triggered my own PTSD around a lot of family issues. My father and his whole family carried it. I immediately started crying in my doctor's office, and poor Dr. Chu was so baffled about what to do about this traumatized, sobbing white girl in her office who would not shut up, that she just kept talking while I was crying and telling her, oh, I'm gonna need to go back to therapy. This is a huge trigger. And she's like, all right, so less bread and less sugar. And, do you eat a lot of ice cream? I mean, it was a comedic scene, people talking past each other. And finally, she stopped and said, are you crying because you've got the diabetes? And I was like, yeah, I'm crying because I've got the diabetes. And she's like, you don't have to worry about that. It's not like when your father has it. We change your diet, you'll be fine. We have medicine, you'll be good. And then she just kept going. And it was so sweet because it was clear that this was not her comfort zone. And she actually spent an hour with me in her office, which I know backed up her waiting room like crazy. It was so kind of her. And when we walked out the hallway, at the end of the hall, she turned to me and she gave me one of these, like a hug from somebody who probably hasn't given one in 10 years and isn't sure if that's how you do it. But she so knew I needed that in that moment. And I am so loyal to Dr. Chu. I will fight for her. I mean, I love her. We have a wonderful, wonderful relationship. But at the time, she was new to my healthcare. It was the first time I'd had health insurance in 6 years. As I know, I'm not the only person in this room that's had that experience. So they were just testing me for everything, and this is what came up. So I go home, and actually I called August, who is sitting here in our front pew today. And she is a trained nutritionist, and she gave me such simple and loving advice. She said, they're gonna give you the blood sugar kit. You just take it every time you eat, write down everything you eat, and write down how it made you feel. It wasn't just the numbers. I mean, I was taking my blood sugars, but she's like, I want you to know, I want you to experience how what you're putting in, and if you're exercising, how does that make you feel? Like, feel yourself. Don't ignore yourself. And it changed my life. And what was so crazy was that after 2 weeks, I could see exactly where I was making mistakes. I could see what I probably needed to cut back on. No coffee creamer for Melanie in the coffee hour. That goes up, that's a sugar of 360. Nope. But if I eat it, but black coffee, booyah. So there were so many things that I could keep in my life that still fed my soul and still made my body feel amazing. And I actually, within 6 months, I had lost 35 pounds, and I had taken my initial A1C, which is terrible. My A1C at diagnosis, thank God I didn't know how bad this was, but it was 13.4, and things above 13, they're thinking about hospitalization, so, it's good I didn't know that at the time. And below 6 is where you want it to be, and at 6 months, mine was 6.3. So it was amazing. It was such a powerful and amazing transformation in my life. And it really was all about those 2 weeks and listening to my body and feeling okay there again, which is not what I expected when I was crying in Dr. Chu's office, that I was going to feel better because of this. I do still eat chocolate because it's God's food. And but it's my sacred. But I can have a little bit and not a lot. I'm okay. Because a lot makes me feel bad, I actually figured out. And now Dr. Chu beams at Pride with me. We're best buddies. She asks about my family. That it transformed that relationship as well. In other words, all of this has taken a hell of a lot to try, but also, it didn't really. And it was fast. I cut out the things that made me feel terrible. I enjoy the things that make me feel great, like water aerobics. I was inspired by our own water instructor extraordinaire, Lynn Sexton, and I love it. And now this healthier, happier person, it's just who I am. I'm more susceptible to viruses. I have less physical stamina that I would like, and that's just part of it. I do still push too hard. I don't sleep enough a lot. But I also love myself in a way that I had long forgotten, because I am forced every single moment, every single meal or snack, to remember how fragile my life is, how hard that I have had to fight and will continue to fight to cherish it, to cherish the joys of connection that it brings me, coming here, playing endless rounds of Go Fish with my nephews in Alabama, sweating through mini golf with my mom because we're determined to not let it beat us, taking on my sister at bowling, I totally creamed her, and laughing with my father over our goofiest family histories, like the argument over why a horse got buried standing straight up in the back pasture. There's a betting pool about why that happened. All we know for sure is that my great-grandmother wasn't going to let it be lying down or be upside down. And so, anyway, now a beautiful patch of flowers grows there, and that's one of our weird family stories. In my research for today, I also uncovered that this songwriter, Jason Isbell, grew up with his grandparents and uncle as his primary caretakers, all of whom played instruments and filled his days with shared playing and singing. It's probably just my fancy, but I imagine that I can feel that joy of simple back porch lyricism in this song. Besides being a fine musician, his grandfather was a Pentecostal minister, and I also feel the pull of the universe's heavy questions on Isbell. What I like about this tune is that, a lot like Unitarian Universalism, it doesn't promise any simple answers to those heavy questions. It offers ourselves as hope, as living answers to our questions. In my opinion, we the triers, we make love manifest in this world, one day at a time, together. And so now together, August and I will do our best to bring you this song, thankfully accompanied by the incredibly talented Chris Maldonado, who always makes our lives more beautiful with his playing. Thank you and wish us luck.